Hello, greetings. So let's have another Gorean topic. And the topic I want to discuss is whether or not the Gore books are basically just written to piss off the feminists. Now, there's a lot of opinions on this. Very many that do identify as Goreans say that no, it is not written just to piss off the feminists. Feminists have nothing to do with it. And I will say, kinda. So, yeah. Now, of course, I do not know John Norman. I have never spoken with the man. So, really, all any of us that do not know him personally can do is make some educated guesses and to analyze the books. I would also say before I start that I do identify as a Gorean free woman. So, yeah, but I might be a bit on the odd front when it comes to being Gorean, as I do heavily criticize the books in some areas. I am not a follow the books religiously kind of person. I like to take the core elements and follow those. And yeah. So, let's start. I think, if I'm going to make a guess, that Norman did not intend his books in and of itself to be a criticism of feminism or as a way to piss off feminists. I think that his intention was to basically, since his main thing is philosophy, history and philosophy are his things, and I think that his intention was to write a series where his ideas of philosophy could play out. And as such, no, his intent were not to piss off the feminists. However, it is also pretty well known that he is pretty anti-feminist, and that do show in his books quite often. Because when I read the books, this is how I experience it. Interesting philosophy, interesting philosophy, interesting philosophy. And we were off into an anti-feminist tangent that often screwed the philosophy completely, and then we were back into the right path. And philosophy, philosophy, philosophy. Feminists are Satan! Philosophy, 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 philosophy. Feminists are Satan! And yes. And this can be quite frustrating, both when you're trying to learn from the books, but also because there's a lot of people takes every single thing in the books as gospel, and there's a lot of contradictions. And if you are one of those that claims, no, there's no contradictions in the books whatsoever, then yeah, there are some sections you will have to explain to me. Anyway, let me take some examples. The whole thing about another city that's ruled by women. You have in one of the earlier books a city that's ruled by women. They are all dressed to look like the evil sister of a certain character from Chihiro. So geek points if you know what I'm referring to. Anyway, they wear silver masks and dress all in robes. And they beat down men, and they are cruel and they are horrible, and of course they eventually lose. However, there are several sections there that say, no, this happened because the men of this city stopped oppressing the women and stopped being firm with them, and then of course they took over. And you find several quotes like this all over the books. That no, women want basically a free woman. If a woman is not enslaved, she wants to degrade men, she wants to step on men, she wants to, yeah. I think my absolute favorite, and by favorite, I mean the thing I like absolutely least in the books, comes in Dancer, where the main character has just been kidnapped to Gore, and yeah. Now, she's a librarian that likes to belly dance, and she is then told, you destroy men. And I see this in so many of those that claim to be Gorean, but have really not gotten the point. They say, no, it's so horrible. Women destroy men because clearly if a woman is not submissive, then she is destroying men. Never mind that a man might have something to say about it. No, all the power lies with the woman. Unless she acts submissively and let him have his ego, then she's destroying men. And there's some issues with this. Let's begin with the examples in the city I mentioned first. The Gore books presents an idea that there is a natural order that women are submissive and men are dominant. Now, like I've pointed out earlier, of course, in the real world that isn't as easy as that because there's individual differences, but I would still say that the statistical majority of women are submissive and the statistic majority of men are dominant. Now, here's the thing. However, the section of Tarnas says is, no, women, unless they're kept under control, they will rise up and rule everything. That, it doesn't say of any natural order. I think that sometimes people misunderstand the difference between an enforced social order that you may or may not believe is moral right and a natural order. Let me try to explain. Let's take, for example, in Iran. But this can also include a lot of fundamentalist Christians and so on and so forth. They say, you shall not have sex other than under these circumstances. And a great part of their society is based around making sure that people do not have sex other than under the approved circumstances, including very harsh punishments for both men and women that have sex out of marriage, strict dress codes to prevent people from having sex, strict rules about how women and men may interact with one another. Now, the problem is that from nature's point of view, human beings want to have sex. We have a need to have sex. We have instincts to have sex. We want to have sex. And all research show that human beings that have a healthy sex life live longer and happier and healthier lives. Sex are good. So the natural order of human beings is to have sex. Quite a bit. So what Iran and a lot of other religious nations do is that they enforce a moral idea that only sex between man and wife is acceptable. But since it is not a natural idea, since that is opposed to the natural order, if you will, they have to constantly enforce it by threatening people's lives, by threatening public ridicule, by forcing people into it, because it's not natural. Now, a natural order is basically what things generally do if outside forces do not stop them. So, for example, migratory birds, I mentioned this in another video. A migratory bird will migrate unless they are put in a cage or something interferes with their natural instincts, or in other ways they are prevented from following that natural instinct, that natural order. Ergo, if we apply this to the Gorean philosophy, it is actually a natural order that women are submissive and men are dominant, which I believe it is, then you do not need to enforce it. Then no, as soon as men do not beat women down, I do not believe that there will be an uprising of women that want to crush men. Because a natural order would then mean that most women would be happy being submissive. The problem with our society, of course, is that there is an outside influence preventing people from following that natural tendency, because there is a social ideal which steps quite heavily on women that wants a more traditional gender role. And I believe that if that tendency was not there, then yes, some women, given the freedom to be so, will have a more masculine role in society, but most women would have a more feminine one. You don't need to enforce it. However, because of Norman's anti-feminist idea, he then immediately then says, no, if women get rights, they will immediately start to crush men. And that does not fit with the general philosophy of the books. So yeah, we have that. Let's take a few other examples, like the one I mentioned in Dancing. This is another part where basically these ideas is very typically in the anti-feminist camp. The idea that no, a woman who acts in a non-typical female way, a woman that's a career woman, a woman, I can talk today, a woman that has a career. For example, this character who is then a librarian, and basically a woman that is not a housewife or live in the very typical female role, is crushing men. She is destroying men, because of course men needs women to give him that, and that I feel is very disempowering, not to women but to men. Because I had this thrown at me by a few Goreans at times when I actually speak my mind and I have boobs. Imagine that I destroy men. So yeah, but that gives all the power to me. Now, who's the dominant one? It says, if I'm kind of nice and compassionate enough to pay lip service and say, yes, of course, good sir, I'll be submissive to you, then you as a man is happy and content. But if I choose not to do that, I destroy. I get that destroy button. Have you played Lemmings? You know that that little atomic icon that you use to destroy all the lemons? I have one of those over men. Because if I'm not submissive, and I think that's bullshit. Because here's the thing. Elsewhere in the books, it is presented that the point is that men need to fend for themselves. They need to be strong. It is not that. It's basically that human beings works like other mammals. In most mammals, men are dominant and the females are submissive. However, it's not like females will then submit to all men. They have to prove themselves strong. And also in the Gorean philosophy, it's that you reach for something. Your freedom is not to be compromised by anybody else. Meaning that if you have the idea that what women do affects how men are dominant, then that puts men as the slave of women. That goes directly against the ideals presented elsewhere in the books. And it is presented that because it's very typical anti-feminist rhetoric. Here's the thing. If you say men enjoy the company of submissive women more, that's fine. If you say men and women are function best better together if one is dominant and one is submissive, that's fine. But by saying if a woman do not choose to be submissive, if she chooses to be a librarian, then she destroy men, then she suddenly has the power to destroy, and just by the mere idea that she earns her own money, she destroy. That takes power away from men. I don't want to submit to a man who is dominant just because I play lip service to him. I want a man who is strong enough to stand on his own 2 feet and demand that respect because of his own power. Because he is physically and mentally stronger than I am. you see here where that thing doesn't really fit in with the idea of the rest of the series. And there's so many examples of this. And so do I think that the books were directly written to piss off feminists? No. But I also think that Norman did include a lot of anti-feminist rhetoric, where he sacrifices the integrity of his own philosophy to include that rhetoric. Because remember, there are many ways to be anti-feminist. Some men just sit down and cry, oh, we don't have that special privilege anymore, I actually have to be strong. It's not enough that I have a penis of those horrible women, like I won't just bow down to the penis anymore. That is not the Gorean ideal of a strong man. That's a slave. A slave that it's best to throw to a sleen. Oh, it's horrible, nobody expects my penis, and trump. And yes, of course, if anybody asks, no, of course, I don't believe there's sleens, it's a joke. Anyway, then you have the other way to be anti-feminist. It's those that intelligently put an idea that here is where feminism is wrong, and a belief that there are actually a difference between men and women. That it's not just if our genitalia points outwards or inwards that matters, but actually there are mental and physical differences between the genders, and as such we are suited for different roles or jobs in society. And that when we act against our inner natures by, for example, forcing ourselves to a false idea of equality, then we become unhappy. That's part of the Gorean philosophy. But that also said that if you are dominant, you have to actually be dominant. It's not enough to just sit down and scream about how you're entitled. You have to stand up on your own 2 feet and demand and take. It doesn't matter if you can demand, and if you are not able to take, then sad day for you. So I think that in a way both parties of this argument are right. I do believe that Norman did not intend it to be directly an anti-feminist work, but at the same time I think that he couldn't completely shake this anti-feminist idea to the point where he always could separate between his philosophy and where the typical anti-feminist ideals and rhetoric doesn't match with that philosophy. And so he creates a lot of contradictions within his work, and that's where I think it's very important for Gorean lifestyler to be able to separate out the two, not just accept everything in the books, but think critically and think, does this section actually fit with the rest of the philosophy, or does it not? So yeah, I'm sure I pissed off a few Goreans with this, because like I said, I respect a lot of the philosophy in the books, enough to call myself Gorean, but I don't blindly accept everything in it, because there are a lot of contradictions, and a lot of Goreans don't like somebody saying that, especially not a woman. But yes, there's a comment field down below if you want to tell me I'm wrong. I welcome all polite comments. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. 20 minutes of 2 cents on the issue. So if you enjoyed this video, have a great day and be well.